Lauren, you talked about it at the top of the show, and we're going to dive into it now because one of the things when I mentioned and said that you weren't on TV that much, you said, well, isn't this around the time frame that Terry Bam Bam Gordy and Dr. Death came in? And you're absolutely right, because at this Omni show where you did take on Sting here in the middle of a card, the show closed with a main event tag team match between the Steiners defending their tag titles in a losing effort against our a personal favorite of our research guy. They were called the Miracle Violence Connection. And for those of you playing along at home, that's Dr. Death Steve Williams and Terry Bam Bam Gordy. And as most people know, Dr. Death was a two-time, or should I say a two-sport collegiate All-American from Oklahoma. I mean, my goodness, if you don't know that, then you weren't listening to Jim Ross back in those days. He played across from Florida State's Heisman contender nose guard Ron Simmons in the Orange Bowl. So there you go. I feel like JR, just spreading that college football knowledge. But as part of the fabulous Freebirds, Bam Bam gained his reputation as one of the best workers, Arn, and bumping big men in all of professional wrestling. And these two came together in Japan. And during this time in WCW, they were still allowed to fulfill the dates that they had in Japan. And these two are Bill Watts guys. There's no doubt about it. And big, strong, rugged veterans who worked for Watts when he owned Mid-South, and they enjoyed enormous success there in Mid-South. But WCW, it's not Mid-South. And this is an entirely different audience, despite having the JCP fans in the crowd. No offense to these two badasses, but they were inserted into the main event picture, and the vehicle for that was the NWA Tag Team Championship Tournament. Meanwhile, WCW had 7 months of TV and pay-per-view invested in you guys, Arn, the Dangerous Alliance, and this changes everything. It's sudden, it's drastic, and to the best of your recollection, I guess this is all Watts' decision-making, wasn't it?
Yep, he loved Doc. You know, Doc and I started at the same time. There's a little trivial thing for you. And, for Bill Watts. Exact same time period we started. And Terry Gordy also had his reputation already cemented in stone with the Freebirds. And they were a great team. And they were big, rugged, tough guys. You know, Doc was one of those guys. Okay, there's probably three really, really, really badasses in the business. You know, I would say Doc was probably considered one of those. You know, one of the legitimate killers. But still, that doesn't mean that everybody in that WCW audience knew who they were and knew that they were in Japan and knew that they were having huge success. Now, they knew Terry was one of the Freebirds, and they knew that Doc was Dr. Death Steve Williams. But still, that same philosophy has to play out. They needed to get 6 months of wins before they challenged for those.
That's it.
You know, build them like you would anybody else, Paul.